I'm currently stood in the Museum of Somerset. Historically, this very location was Taunton Castle, and you can see here George Jeffreys, also known as Hanging Judge Jeffreys. Now, he earned that name after sentencing so many people to be hanged following the Monmouth Rebellion. Probably no surprise that he's thought to haunt many locations in Taunton. Join me, let's talk about some history of this very man and some of these supposed hauntings around Taunton.
Today this is the Museum of Somerset, but nearly 1,000 years ago this was Taunton Castle. Little remains of the original Norman structure, but if you know where to look you can find traces all around, and it's here where much of the town's darker history unfolded. In 1685, James Scott, the Duke of Monmouth, launched a rebellion to claim the throne from King James II, his own uncle. The West Country, including Taunton, Bridgewater and Dunster, with their strong parliamentarian history, were quick to support him. The names of all of those rebels that stood trial in this very location are shown here. Have a close look, you might recognise some of the names, perhaps even your own. These trials left a legacy that still echoes through local families today. Taunton Castle has a history that goes back centuries. By 1536 we already find official records of hurdles and gallows being established here, tools that would have been used for punishment, torture and execution. By the 1600s the Assize Court was held right here in the Great Hall, and after the Monmouth Rebellion this became the site of the bloody Assizes. Judge George Jeffreys resided over the trials of hundreds of people, sentencing many to death and hundreds to transportation. Many from nearby Bridgewater were condemned, and it's no coincidence that Bridgewater later became the first town in England to petition against slavery. Its people knew the cruelty of forced labour firsthand. With a history this dark, it's no surprise many believe this building is haunted. Staff and visitors alike have reported doors opening and closing on their own, strange voices heard, unknown apparitions seen in corners and sudden chills. Judge Jeffreys himself is said to glide down this very staircase, and sometimes seen on the landing, a spectral figure in red and white robes with a long white wig. In the Great Hall, dragon sounds and footsteps are often heard, said to be a rebel soldier, hauled before the court for sentencing by a royalist. Not too far from the castle sits one of Taunton's most iconic and historic buildings, the Tudor Tavern. For centuries, locals and visitors alike have claimed this building is haunted by none other than Judge Jeffreys. People have reported footsteps on the upper floors when the building is empty, unexplained movements and the feeling of being watched from the shadowed windows. But here's the thing, there's no historical record of Jeffreys ever staying at the Tudor Tavern. What we do have are records pointing out something much darker just a few steps away. Today, the Michael Spears jewellery shop stands nearby, but in 1685 this was the site of the White Hart Inn. Contemporary accounts tell us that it was from the front of this very building where two rebel soldiers were hanged from the pub sign. Jeffreys' right-hand man is said to have sat calmly outside, enjoying his tea, watching as the two rebels, in his very own words, did their last jig. And it was in this very area, just days earlier, that the Duke of Monmouth himself was mock-crowned king by the people of Taunton, a gesture of rebellion that would ultimately cost many of them their very own lives. Judge Jeffreys is certainly a name that clings to the history of Taunton. It's as if the events from his life still linger faintly in the air of this historic town. Jeffreys might be the name that comes to mind when people think of ghosts of the 17th century judges, but he wasn't the only judge from this period to visit Taunton. Could this be a case of mistaken identity? What do you think? Please let me know in the comments.